His defensive metrics show a high volume tenacious tackler, but in possession, whilst he's a fairly decent carrier of the ball, when it comes to his ball retention, progressive passing and creativity, this guy is without doubt one of the best central midfielders in the Premier League, and in my opinion he has the potential to be one of the best central midfielders in world football, taking the throne from players like Luka Modric and Toni Kroos when they eventually hang up their boots. And I think in the near to mid future there could be an opportunity for United to use Mason Mount as some kind of makeway to bring this Premier League midfielder to Old Trafford. And this player is Enzo Fernandez, but why would Chelsea sell Enzo Fernandez to Manchester United after only signing him in January for over £100 million? Well, let me break down my theory and then you can let me know in the comments. But before I go any further, remember to subscribe to the channel and check out my Patreon podcast, which will be linked below. But also, if you want cheap, good quality football jerseys for the new season or retro jerseys from the past 40 years, then check out jerseyfever.com. A link will be in my Instagram bio, and if you use coupon code Atlantis, you should get a discount as well. I'll leave my Instagram at the top of the description and comment section, and a link will be in my Instagram bio. If back in 2020 I told you that Chelsea had spent just over £1 billion on players, in the course of just 12 to 13 months, Mason Greenwood has been exiled on loan to Getafe, whilst Jude Bellingham is at Real Madrid and Mbappe is still at PSG, you'd probably say it's just a fantasy, and that's a point. The world of football is so unpredictable that you almost have to predict the unpredictability, and I think the most unpredictable place in the Premier League over the next 3 seasons will definitely be Chelsea. I mean, I don't think they're getting 4th this season, they may get 5th, and that may be enough to get them Champions League football next season, if English clubs perform well in the Champions League this season, which I do anticipate. I think the league's going to go Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal in 3rd, United in 4th, Tottenham in 5th, Newcastle in 6th, Brighton in 7th, Chelsea in 8th, Aston Villa in 9th and Brentford in 10th. And if this were to happen, not only would Pochettino's job be under threat, but this would be another season where Chelsea wouldn't be playing European football. And so I think, considering Enzo Fernandez came from Benfica, who did have Champions League football, whilst also having the type of World Cup performances that really gave him a standout name in Europe. And so I think if Chelsea don't get European football for a second season, he may be looking to jump ship not just to a club that has European football, but Champions League football. And if Chelsea are finishing around 7th or 8th, it may cause a type of situation where Enzo Fernandez is willing to force through a move. And if this opportunity were to come around, I think United have to be looking at it as a chance to take advantage of a rival's chaos. Because despite Chelsea's poor form over the past year or so, I think that Enzo Fernandez has been fantastic, arguably Chelsea's best player. If you watch Chelsea's opening game at Stamford Bridge against Liverpool, you'll see how good Enzo Fernandez was. Being someone who's incredibly efficient at circulating possession when he drops deep in front of the opposition's midfield line, being able to play the role of a metronome, someone who's sitting there dictating tempo, knowing when to play short sharp passes to retain possession, when to switch play with a long pass out to the flanks, whilst also having the incisive passing ability to break the lines of the opposition's defensive shape, which combined with his incredible engine which allows him to motor around the pitch, being a significant active threat in all thirds of the pitch, alongside his undeniable creativity in the final third, and you have one of the most complete central midfielders not just in the league but probably in Europe at the moment. And if Chelsea do crash and burn, which I do predict, surely Enzo Fernandez sooner or later is going to look to flee the sinking ship. Now, I'm not saying it will happen next summer, but I think maybe in January 2025 or the summer of 2025, if Chelsea are dipping in and out of the Champions League and Enzo Fernandez looks like he does want to leave, Chelsea may decide to cash in. And we've seen with their business this season that they aren't afraid to sell to rivals. And I think that Manchester United could potentially use Mason Mount as a way of bringing Enzo Fernandez to Old Trafford. And on the face of that, I think it's a deal that pretty much every United fan would do. Because not only do I think Enzo Fernandez is currently a better player than Mason Mount, I also think he has more potential and actually suits what Ten Hag needs from a central midfielder a lot more than Mason Mount does. And I can see Mason Mount struggling to adapt to the role that Ten Hag has for him, just because I don't think United have the players around him to get the best out of him in the system, because Mason Mount is very much a system player, whereas I do think Enzo Fernandez, you can put him in most systems, and you'll see an immediate impact with your ability to progress the ball into dangerous positions, and just in general giving you more creativity from deeper positions. Now, before I analyse Enzo Fernandez in a little more detail, let's just look at the finances behind this potential deal. So Enzo Fernandez was signed from Benfica on an 8.5-year deal for £105 million, and because Enzo's contract was 3 years longer than the usual 5 years that clubs hand out, Chelsea can amortise a transfer fee over that full 8 years, which essentially just means that rather than having to pay the £105 million up front to Benfica, it gets spread across 8 years, meaning that Chelsea are essentially paying just over £12.5 million a season to have Fernandez. And because Chelsea have given out such long contracts, I can see a situation where instead of selling the player, they're happy to loan the player out just as Atletico Madrid to Chelsea and pick up a loan fee for that season, which they can then use to pay off the amortisation that they have to pay for the player that year. Let's say by this time next season, Chelsea don't manage to qualify for the Champions League and maybe not even the Europa League, finishing 7th or 8th. Enzo Fernandez wants to leave and Chelsea still value him around £100 million. If I was in charge of recruitment at United, factoring in that we do get Champions League football of course, I would look to maybe offer Chelsea a loan for loan. Take Enzo Fernandez from Chelsea with a loan fee of around £12.5 million, but use Mason Mount going back on loan to Chelsea as a way of paying the loan fee. Now obviously Chelsea and Pochettino, or whoever is a head coach at the time, will need to be interested in bringing Mason Mount back to Stamford Bridge, but if he struggles in his first season at United, maybe that door opens. He was obviously a fan favourite whilst he was at Chelsea, and maybe because of the circus that has followed Chelsea over the past year or so, both fans and the board are happy to allow Mason Mount to come back. With Mount costing around £55 million up front, amortised out over the course of his 5-year deal, that means that United are essentially paying £11 million a season for Mason Mount. Now reduce that to say £10 million, and I would be looking to offer maybe £2.5 million plus Mason Mount on loan to bring Enzo Fernandez on loan for the 2024-25 season. Now if this deal were to happen, I can see it going down a lot more chaotically, maybe even in the January transfer window if Chelsea have a poor start to the season next year, and Mason Mount is still struggling to establish himself in Ten Hag's system. Just picture it, transfer deadline day, January 31st, 2025. Enzo Fernandez goes on loan to Manchester United for the rest of the season, with Mason Mount going the other way, and United may be paying £1 or £2 million on top. And of course there are options to buy in both players' contracts. United can make Enzo Fernandez's deal permanent at the end of the season in the summer of 2025. For a fee of £87.5 million, basically the rest of what Chelsea have to pay for Enzo Fernandez, whilst Chelsea can make Mason Mount's deal permanent for around £40 million. And this is a type of unpredictable deal that I could definitely see taking place in the next few seasons, but what would Enzo Fernandez bring to United's midfield if they were able to pull this sort of deal off? Looking at Enzo Fernandez's FBref report from the 1,547 minutes he played in the Premier League last season, he's a thing of dreams despite playing for a pretty horrific Chelsea. I mean, the passing section in his FBref report pretty much speaks for itself. He ranks in the 99th percentile, the top 1%, for the amount of medium and long passes he's completed, as well as his passes into the final third and his overall progressive passes as well. And considering he's also ranking in the 75th to 85th percentile range for his passes into the penalty area, his XG assisted, as well as dominating his pass completion metrics both in short, medium and in particular long passes, I don't think it's an over-exaggeration to say that Enzo Fernandez is arguably one of the, if not the best, in-possession central midfielder in the whole league. I mean, just imagine what Enzo Fernandez would do if he was in Pep's City side, Klopp's Liverpool, Arteta's Arsenal, or maybe even Ten Hag's Manchester United. I think Enzo Fernandez is the perfect central midfielder to come in to play alongside Bruno Fernandes, ahead of either Casemiro or Amrabat, as unlike Mason Mount, Enzo Fernandez is comfortable playing either as a 6 or as an 8, capable of picking up the ball in front of the opposition's midfield line, progressing it into the final third and circulating possession, whilst also being capable of sitting in behind the opposition's midfield line, receiving the ball and then looking to create. Not only is he far superior to Mason Mount in possession, but he's also got the tenacious tackling ability that I don't think Mason Mount has. And so that's why I think a swap deal could work out well for both players, with Enzo Fernandez potentially making United title contenders, and Mason Mount maybe going back where he maybe shouldn't have left. So let me know if this is a deal you'd like to see United try to do in the comment section. You can sign up to my Patreon, subscribe to the channel and click the bell, and for more videos that I think you may like, check out the description.